he wouldn't have jumped.
Kate had it, the thing that you look for. There was a luminous quality in her face, in her eyes, that I just knew that people would be ready to go the distance with her. Because it's a hell of a journey.
That's brilliant. Never done underwater acting before, have I?
It's her first American film, probably 10 times the scale of anything she's ever done.
The set will be sinking during the shot.
Being away from home, so this is like completely taking her to a different dimension, I'm sure, you know? My heart goes out to her.
Aim higher. No, aim higher. Much higher. There. That's it.
I know that working on a James Cameron movie is quite like nothing else. I mean it, I'll let go. I know. Quite like nothing else. I know. But I really have loved it.
Our first threshold of realization was we're going to have to build a lot of the ship, really a lot of it, to really pull off this story and to do it in a satisfying way that's significantly beyond what's been done before. Because if you're not really breaking new ground, what's the point? Now how are we going to light it? And how are we going to shoot it?
The Titanic was really a floating city of light, and you really see that in the illustrations, and that's what we tried to capture in our photography. The most basic thing we had to do at first was just count portholes. Each one of those requires a light behind it, sometimes several. When you walk inside, at 70 miles of one kind of cable and 70 miles of another kind of cable all add up to this Terry Gilliam vision of the telephone company in the 1950s.
The Titanic is the world of the movie. It has to be real. And we had to shoot it as if the Titanic was sitting there, you know, tied up down at Long Beach, and we could just take it out for a spin and shoot on the deck and shoot it with helicopters and make it interesting.
We used all the technology we could to make you believe the Titanic lives. It's on the open water, it's at sea. It is depicted in the film the way Jim Cameron would like to depict it in the film, without any limitation to it. We sort of equate it to being like a symphony, where it's made up of so many notes, and if all the notes are played perfectly, you believe what we're asking you to believe. Smoke coming out of the smokestacks, people on the deck of the ship. And not only people on the deck of the ship, because that's too easy, it's what are they doing? Are they doing something that you believe to be real? When you hit like every note, all of a sudden it transcends the technique of it, and you're there. It is absolutely the Titanic.
Take it to sea, Mr. Murdoch. Let's stretch your legs. Yes, sir.
You have the sequence of scenes when they decide to really bring up the speed and just pound this Leviathan forward at the fastest it'll go. And you've got hundreds of stokers down below throwing coal into these big furnaces, and the big crankshafts of the engines are turning over, these 4-story high engines. You see the power of it, and you see the satisfaction of the officers who run the ship and their domination of the elements.
21 knots, sir.
And then I take that energy and I give it to Jack, Leonardo's character. He's an artist. He's a guy who's able to have his heart soar.
I'm the king of the world!
It's his ship, man. You know, it doesn't matter that he doesn't have a dime. This is his ship. It's his moment. He owns the moment. It both celebrates the ship and it celebrates his character at the same time, which is what I really love about that scene. I've always tried to take the biggest epic moments and somehow tie them always back to the human heart in some way. Confronted with the wreck itself, the fact of it lying on the sea bottom created a sense for us collectively, certainly for me personally, that after that point, everything else had to live up to that level of authenticity.
It was an era known for opulence and conspicuous consumption by the haves of society, and there were a lot of haves on Titanic, some of the richest people in the world, John Jacob Astor, Guggenheim, Molly Brown. Everything was big and ostentatiously so. You couldn't make this movie without showing that.
It was one delight after another. From the boat deck, you could go down the stairs, deck after deck, and end up on that D-deck landing with that beautiful candelabra.
Doesn't this look great?
And the furniture, all faithfully reproduced. The carpets woven by the same company that wove the carpets for the Titanic in 1912. You know, for someone who knows the ship so well that I can explore the ship in my mind, the dreamlike experience of doing this was just beyond almost anything I can describe.
The efforts in wardrobe have been phenomenal, going out and purchasing actual vintage clothing and researching the time.
Everyone combined puts forth an incredible amount of effort to make it perfect. We want it so badly to be right. You know, when Polly beads a dress, she wants to pick a bead that really existed in 1912.
This is in my memory forever. Forever. This film would be with me forever. It's incredible. Everyone, you know, you touch one and you say, oh, but look at this one. And then you go, oh, look at this one. It's wonderful.
I walked into the dining room for the first time, and of course all the tables are set, and everything's bright and gleaming the way they described it, the people who were there. And all of a sudden, this flood of people in 1912 costume are crossing through the reception room and going into the dining room, and they just are here for dinner. They've arrived.
Hoy entraremos a la cubierta del Titanic y experimentaremos el poder como nunca antes.
Accurate to the Titanic. The crystal is sensational. The cutlery is all stamped. I mean, it's tremendous. And the caviar was scrummy.
No caviar for me, thanks. Never did like it much.
Tell us of the accommodations and steerage, Mr. Dawson. I hear they're quite good on this ship.
The best I've seen, ma'am. Hardly any rats.
It begins with Ruth going out of her way to trash Jack, and then, quite honestly, and without any artifice or pre-thought, Jack winds up turning the table. You know, I wanted the first-class dinner to be very elegant and very correct for the times, the formality.
God, she belongs to Thomas Andrews.
It's all for me. Just start from the outside and work your way in.
And really just as deadly as watching paint dry. I mean, this is not a world you want Rose to live the rest of her life within.
And then the steerage party was just, wow!
It was like bumper cars.
It was absolutely mad, and there was this brilliant Irish band called Gaelic Storm, and the Steadicam was in and out and dodging around between people, and it was great. I loved it.
You're amazing, Rose. Hey, 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 hey. Dippin', dippin', hippin', ho. Hey, hey.
I can do it better.
Go, go. He'd been practicing really hard. I was really kind of proud of him. He'd really got the footwork down.
It's just a celebration of being alive, really. And I believe that's what those people were actually like on the ship, because they were going to a new life. They had made a decision to put aside all of their friends and all of their family and leave everything that they ever knew and go to a new place. And it just makes it seem like the idea that you're going to die, that disaster and doom are coming, are so far away and so impossible to conceive. And if you don't start from that place, you'll never understand what it was like to be on that ship.
Yes. Iceberg, right ahead! There's a moment of, do I go left or do I go right? I better get this right.
The ship only needed to turn another 10 or 15 feet, and it probably would have made it.
goes down by the head, the water will spill over the tops of the bulkheads from one to the next, back and back. There's no stopping it. Action!
If you were a third-class, steerage male, you stood about a 1 in 10 chance of surviving.
What are we doing, Mommy? When we finish putting first-class people in the boat, they'll be starting with us, and we'll want to be all ready, won't we?
If you were a first-class female, you stood virtually 100% chance of surviving.
When the ship finally starts to sink, the sort of decision of whether to go with her old lifestyle and be safe or take a huge chance and risk everything that she's ever had comes with it.
Don't you understand? The water is freezing and there aren't enough boats. Not enough by half. Half the people on this ship are going to die.
Not the better half.
So you have these two people from different worlds, very almost fairy tale in its simplicity. They fall in love across all the class boundaries, and then the ship hits an iceberg, and then those class boundaries tend to rip them apart.
In an hour or so, all this will be at the bottom of the Atlantic.
Okay, it's 1:30 in the morning, and what we're seeing here are boats 9, 11, 13, and 15 leaving in pretty quick succession. And for a lot of the steerage passengers, this is their last chance to get off. And these boats are pretty much the most full of all the ones that are leaving the ship.
You see that fully loaded lifeboat being lowered off a ship 65 feet above the water and jerking down on those ropes, and the tips of those davits flex about 6 inches. They go doink, 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 and it just all seems like it's just going to collapse and fall apart, and it seems so harebrained. And yet our davits were built by the company that built the actual davits on the Titanic.
I don't think you can make something more realistic and detailed than this film, unless you were to actually take the ship and sink it, which we're pretty much doing.
Over the set.
Over the set, Scotty. Okay, we're lowering the set, Josh. We're lowering the set.
The pumps that are making the water are just being aimed by guys. So if they see you're in trouble, they'll say it wrong.
A lot of the water stuff has been really rough just because I'm really temperature sensitive.
Come on, scary.
I'm not going in there until they say rolling.
Come on.
If we had heated the tanks, they would have steamed like a jacuzzi. So we had to keep the tanks at a temperature that made them visually correct.
Everybody else was in wetsuits or dry suits or something, but I can't wear anything underneath that costume because by design there's no room for such joys. That water was so cold. Holding onto this axe in my right hand, and I couldn't touch the bottom with my feet at all. The water was up to here, and I had to hold onto this pipe and shimmy as quickly as I could. I couldn't go, oh no, I don't want to do this, or anything like that. I just had to get in there and do it, and I did, and I can't believe that I did, really.
Oh! Do you think we can get a little bit of swimming pool, by the way? Oh.
There's a stateliness to the way we perceive the sinking of the Titanic. It was not stately. I wanted it to be more visceral, to be more primal, and quite frankly, to be more terrifying.
The Grand Staircase almost becomes a character in this movie. We see it several times, and it really is the entrance to the beautiful world. Later during the film, we see that beautiful world submerged, destroyed. It was quite a logistical undertaking because the staircase is several stories high.
We're actually building this as they built it on the Titanic. We're not building it as a film set, we're building it as a real staircase that can actually take quite a bit of damage with water and things like that. It'll be interesting to see how much of it is left afterwards.
Just a couple of months ago we were in Mexico City building this thing out of solid oak, and now here we are in Rosarito, which is north of Mexico, getting ready to shoot it. The time is now 2:15 in the day of Titanic, so the boat is at 12 degrees, sinking down into the water. It's never been tested with water, so it's going to be quite exciting, I should think.
This water came cascading in.
with such brutal force that it actually caused the grand staircase itself to rip from its foundation. And it was very representative of what we believe most likely happened on the ship itself.
People really expected to be saved. I think that up to the last minute, when they finally saw the ship going way up and then plunging straight down, they thought that no matter what, the ship was going to stay afloat.
What is man's relationship to God in a situation where God appears to have forsaken him utterly? You know?
You're facing your death. Your death is coming toward you. There ain't no life there. It's not solemn. It's not noble. You know, you're looking around. Do I want to be like them? Do I want to be throwing deck chairs off and jumping into the water like rats?
Some of them were protected by their faith. Some of them felt abandoned, that there was no sense to the universe. I think it's a really interesting opportunity to just analyze human reaction in a situation that ultimately becomes one of almost certain death.
I remember going to the cemetery in Halifax after filming all night, and they all have the same date, April 15, 1912. There was a tombstone there to a young officer, and the inscription read, "Each man stood his post while the weaker ones went by, and showed again to all the world how Englishmen should die." It's just so evocative of nobility, and I think everybody aspires to that.
No, thank you. We have dressed in our best and are prepared to go down as gentlemen.
We disconnect the front 180 feet and put it on hydraulic cables, and you will actually see the front section of the ship on camera go underwater as the water pours up on actors.
All the stunt people that are on that section are going to get tangled up in things and be sucked down. So it's really the safety aspect of everything. And we'll have a load of lifeguards, we'll have a load of safety divers.
Lower the sack.
Action! It was quite something to be on that set, to watch the water rushing up the deck of the ship as fast as it was, to realize these people had seconds to make up their minds about what they were going to do.
As the final plunge came, the bow had gone under, the whole forward part of the ship had gone under, the ship began to rotate very rapidly.
Jack, this is where we first met.
It literally pulled the stern right up in the air to an angle of about 45 degrees.
God almighty.
It's a massive stunt sequence in that the back section of the ship went up to 90 degrees. So anyone on it was either holding on or they fell.
Like that, you can see how he falls, and like, you know what I mean?
We're continuously testing things, and ideas are being thrown around. Oh, how can we do this? Or what if we try this?
Oh no, Mr. Bell. They kind of form natural pads, so if we use soft foam, the dummies themselves can actually take the impact of people sliding. Yeah.
Oh my God. I don't believe it.
We were 200 feet in the air, cabled on as it was completely vertical. And then all of a sudden I see Jim on a crane going another 100 feet in the air with his camera sort of leaning over like this. Just looking at the whole situation was completely surreal. And there have been a lot of moments like that.
Since Jim built a portion of the set that actually worked on a hydraulic rig, they're literally doing the same action that the real Titanic did, and the same dangers are involved. And you want to see more of the ship than they could possibly stick on a hydraulic rig and do it safely. So Digital Domain, we ended up adding the rest of the ship that you would have wanted to have seen in a grand shot like that.
I don't know.
It's very exciting what they're doing in that they can do a fall, say, of 40 feet. They can take that person and then put them falling 200 feet, hitting things on the way down. So it's not just, oh, that's all digital, that's all just stunt work, that's all special effects. It's a combination of everything that makes a sequence.
When you look at it, it's disturbing in some way because you know that you just recreated a moment in time, that these people went through that.
Oh, God.
I guess there's theories of things happening of such intensity that they almost create an echo in time. And the Titanic has that feeling.
Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes closed.
If Rose had a wish at the age of 101, her wish would be that she lived in a world where the Titanic was not a famous ship, where it was just another ship.
Open your eyes.
He's flying! I think it's great that this film is being made, I really do, because it doesn't feel like, you know, another Titanic movie. It's more than that. I think one of the things that is so brilliant about Jim is that in all of his movies, so much about people, Titanic was called the Ship of Dreams.
Su viaje principal. El reconocido capitán pensaba retirarse después de completar este viaje. Entre los pasajeros estaba la gente más rica en el mundo y algunos de los más pobres. Inmigrantes esperanzados en la búsqueda de la nueva vida. El barco navegaba a través del Atlántico Norte casi a su máxima velocidad. Un iceberg se interpuso en su camino. La colisión destruyó completamente al barco. Había botes apenas para la mitad de la tripulación. 1.500 almas perdidas. El mundo impactado. La confianza en una era estaba destrozada.
Para mí es una historia dinámica. Y, saben, siempre he estado interesado en el océano. Así que había cierto punto de transición en el que me di cuenta a dónde me dirigía haciendo una película de esta situación.
La historia del Titanic es legendaria. Para contar la historia real, Cameron sabe que se deben separar los hechos de la ficción. Y para él, la única forma, para comenzar, era enfrentarse con el Titanic verdadero. En 1995 navegó el Atlántico Norte para embarcarse y sumergirse una serie de veces, con la ayuda del Dr. Anatoly Zagalevich y la nave para investigaciones rusas, el Kelvin. Por cerca de un mes, el barco estuvo en el lugar donde el Titanic se hundió y se convirtió en la casa de un grupo de científicos y camarógrafos quienes desafiaron a las fuerzas de la naturaleza mientras se sumergían hacia el fondo del océano. Es una misión el filmar en uno de los ambientes más extremos de la Tierra. El Titanic está a 2,5 millas de la superficie del océano. A esa profundidad el agua tiene una presión de 6,000 libras por pulgada cuadrada. Suficiente para dejar a una taza ordinaria de poliestireno en pedazos pequeños.
La gente había fotografiado al Titanic antes con IMAX, pero la cámara IMAX estaba dentro de un sumergible, viendo a través de un cristal, y no quería que eso me limitara. Quería mi cámara afuera, en el agua, para lograr una mejor vista.
Pero no existe ningún sistema de cámaras que puedan soportar el peso del océano a esas profundidades. Así que el ingeniero Mike Cameron y Panavision combinaron sus fuerzas y construyeron una. La cámara especializada, sin embargo, solo puede grabar 12 minutos de cinta, y una vez que está sumergida no puede recargarse, de modo que ni una simple fracción puede perderse. Así que el equipo sumergible debe ensayar antes de cada zambullida.
Hicimos un modelo del siniestro en el que juntamos lo mejor de los conocimientos de todos para ver cómo debió verse ese siniestro. Hicimos pruebas secas de las fotografías en el humo. Hicimos que los pilotos rusos movieran sus pequeños juguetes como iban a mover los grandes, pero no entendían en qué consistían las grabaciones. Si puedes vernos, la grabación es buena. Si no puedes vernos, entonces la grabación es mala. ¿Entendido? ¿Está bien? ¿Quieres sumergirte?
Sí. Para obtener todas las cintas que planearon, el equipo de Cameron tuvo que sumergirse hasta el Titanic 12 veces. Cada zambullida tomó al menos 16 horas para completarse. Simplemente llegar al fondo tomaba 2 horas de caída libre. Dentro del sumergible no se puede más que esperar. El espacio es pequeño. La temperatura baja en las aguas glaciales. Y el destino final es muy oscuro. Solo las luces del sumergible pueden revelar los secretos que están aquí.
Bien, despacio. La proa debe estar exactamente. Debe estar directamente. Miren eso. Lotería. Vean eso, ahí está el Titanic. Tenemos que ir por las fotos. ¿Listos? Sí. Acción, acción.
Acción, acción. Fue una experiencia sorprendente, solo a 10 pies del hundimiento más famoso del mundo.
Vamos a regresar hasta ustedes y ver si podemos alcanzar la posición donde podamos filmar esa acción.
Vamos a intentarlo una vez más.
Roger, como algunos taxis en Nueva York, estuvimos subiendo y bajando, tratando cuidadosamente de llegar a la coreografía y filmar obras maestras específicas.
Las dos primeras sumergidas estuvieron intensamente enfocadas para obtener cintas que teníamos planeadas. En las dos primeras obtuve basura, porque no estaba tratando con ese barco en sus propios términos. No iba ahí y no dejaba que el Titanic me hablara. Así que fue hasta el final de la segunda sumergida que estaba en el barco de apoyo y estaba solo en mi cabina. Y empecé a llorar. Fue algo que me impactó. Toda la tragedia de lo que sucedió en el Titanic. Así que en algunas de las últimas sumergidas abandoné mi plan porque no estaba obteniendo lo que quería. Como sea, y lo que estaba obteniendo es mucho más interesante. Y tenía esta ROV que construimos, que se supone que sería una cámara lista. Se iba a cargar en el submarino y la íbamos a tener por ahí. Y después la íbamos a subir por su cable, pero tenía una cámara y podía entrar en el barco. Y nadie había hecho eso antes.
En las últimas dos sumergidas, el equipo de Cameron envió el ROV profundamente dentro del barco, tanto como ninguno había llegado. Revela una serie de imágenes fantasmagóricas. Estas vistas del hundimiento nunca antes se habían visto.
Las puertas, estas puertas de la época que tienen esas ornamentas de hierro, esas cosas aún están ahí, aún se conservan, aún está esa elegancia, el fantasma de esa elegancia. Estaban esos hermosos candelabros de cristal cortado, colgando ahí en medio de estas estalactitas, formadas por la formación de Moll, donde puedes pensar que estás en una especie de gruta extraña. Casi parece una formación natural con un candelabro en ella. Estas habitaciones, a las que le llamaron suites millonarias, entramos en la que estuvo reservada para J.P. Morgan. El poder entrar en esta habitación y ver la chimenea de mármol que sigue ahí, y poder comparar nuestro video con una fotografía de ese periodo de tiempo, y ver el veteado en el mármol, y darte cuenta de que es lo mismo, es como una huella digital. Es una imagen surrealista para mí, ver esos pequeños cangrejos blancos trepando la chimenea de la habitación reservada para J.P. Morgan.
Cameron se sumergió al verdadero Titanic para proporcionarle a la producción más que solo secuencias para su película.
Trajimos algo de los restos que el mundo debía compartir, sin tocarlo ni perturbarlo en ninguna forma. Trajimos algunas imágenes. Y además para mí personalmente, pero para nosotros, la producción colectivamente, desde ese punto todo era para revivirlo con un cierto grado de autenticidad. Tienen que conservar lo que sucedió en sus mentes para toda la vida. Hubo momentos en los que era espeluznante.
Mi madre decía, bueno, si hay hielo flotando, no debe haber iceberg.
Es el momento en el tiempo cuando el hombre toma sus máquinas sobre el poder de la naturaleza. Cada clase social conoce su lugar.
No puedes contar la historia del Titanic sin contar la historia de la clase alta norteamericana.
La lista de ilustres pasajeros del Titanic incluyen al financiero hotelero John Jacob Astor, la condesa escocesa de Rhodes, la millonaria Molly Brown, el coronel Archibald Gracie, Sir Cosmo Duff Gordon y su esposa Lucille.
Puedes caminar alrededor de la mesa en la cena y puedes decir dónde estaba la gente en casi cada instante, sin que te lo dijeran. Fue el esfuerzo de Jim hacer que esta gente se vea como se ve en las fotografías. Escogió a la gente en base a su apariencia.
Nunca le presentarían a Benjamin Guggenheim, Madame Aubert.
Cameron plasmó incontables personajes históricos en su historia. El diseñador del Titanic, Thomas Andrews. El gerente de la línea White Star, Bruce Ismay. Los miembros de la tripulación del barco, así como el célebre capitán Edward J. Smith. Y la famosa banda del barco.
So you want to go to a real party?
La película incluye los rostros sin nombre de pasajeros de tercera clase, inmigrantes esperanzados de todo el mundo. Dejaron sus hogares y familias en búsqueda de prosperidad y promesas de una nueva vida. Ricos y pobres, famosos y oscuros, la sociedad de una época está encarnada en los pasajeros del barco.
Para comprender la tragedia de este barco, tienes que entender el barco. Si no aprecias al barco, no aprecias el hundimiento, así que tienes que apreciarlo en los términos subjetivos, lo que la gente siente al respecto antes de que sepan que están en el Titanic.
Cuando subimos vi por una gran ventana, había dentro un hermoso comedor y la plata y el vino, todo era hermoso y nuevo.
Para ilustrar completamente este sentido de poder y optimismo, Cameron tuvo que hacer más que contar la historia con palabras. Tuvo que revelar historias con imágenes vividas y reconstruir no solo los objetos de una era, sino sugerir un aura de tiempo. Con la guía de los mejores historiadores del Titanic, Cameron y su equipo construyeron más que un set de cine. Crearon un duplicado exacto del barco.
Los interiores como los exteriores se hicieron con atención y detalle. No puedo pensar en él como un set. Hasta el día de hoy lo llamo Titanic.
De las profundidades del océano, las cubiertas del Titanic reviven una vez más. El gimnasio del barco aparece tal como era en 1912. Las suites de primera clase una vez más resumen el lustre de la época dorada. Y la gran escalera se transforma en un viviente color de la realidad.
Ver para abajo en las escaleras de primera clase y ver para arriba y ver el domo e ir de cubierta en cubierta hasta llegar a la cubierta D con ese hermoso candelabro. Realmente, creo que es una atención sin precedente al detalle. No se tomó ninguna libertad con el diseño físico del barco y trató de tomarse libertades virtuales con la historia.
La atención de Cameron a los eventos históricos puede verse en los pequeños detalles. El himno que cantaron el domingo por la mañana terminó con letra irónica. Por aquellos que peligran en el océano. Cuando el hielo cayó en el barco después del impacto con el iceberg, pasajeros de tercera clase estuvieron jugando soccer con él. Era práctica común que los ingenieros calentaran su sopa en las pipas de vapor, como describen en la película cuando el jefe, Bell, da la orden. Cuando se reportó que el barco se estaba hundiendo, los pasajeros fueron reprimidos por destruir la propiedad. Elementos de esta escena, con Jack espiando en la cubierta de primera clase, se basan en una fotografía actual tomada a bordo del Titanic antes de partir a Queen. El padre Biles, un sacerdote católico, viajó en segunda clase. Él unió a una gran multitud en una oración en la cubierta mientras el barco se hundía.
Todo lo que ven sobre el Titanic, no sobre Jackie Rose, es verdad. Y está ahí porque es parte del gran drama.
Fueron 2 horas y media, esa gente pudo salvarse, pero no había botes suficientes, nunca lo olvidaré.
We are making excellent time.
Excuse me, sir. Another ice warning.
You can't keep us locked in here like animals. The ship's bloody leaking!
Existe una gran cantidad de información referente a los aspectos físicos del Titanic y la era en la cual existió. Pero hay muchos eventos dramáticos que permanecen bajo el velo del misterio.
Siempre habrá historias sobre el Titanic que sean controversiales. No creo que puedas tener algo que le fascine a tantos y que no haya gente que debata sobre lo que pasó esa noche, quién hizo qué y cómo se comportaron.
El iceberg tenía una forma más o menos así como esto. Y tal vez había un poco más de masa hacia la derecha y algo hizo que él decidiera tomar hacia la izquierda. Tienes que entrar y hacer la investigación y descubrir lo que la gente hacía y pensaba y cómo actuaba. Quién fue un cobarde, quién fue heroico y quién murió noblemente.
El reto para James Cameron y los historiadores es armar el rompecabezas y presentar los eventos en la luz más exacta posible.
Los cohetes los trajo a cubierta el cabo Rowe, quien vio que el séptimo bote estaba en el agua. ¿Y cómo podía estar el séptimo bote en el agua con tanta gente? Pasas 2 años uniendo referencias sobre lo que todos escribieron o dijeron sobre algo. Encuentras muchos conflictos, pero encuentras suficientes refuerzos para poder empezar algo. Puedes empezar a unirlo.